Hey guys, Jerry, the poor historian here, currently in my often neglected in-house workshop. And I wanted to bring to you something that I've been planning to make for a while, and I finally have most of the equipment that I need. This is how to make a cheap, affordable, high quality, sparring safe Scottish basket hilt sword. The reason that I want to make this is because I was able to teach a Scottish basket hilt class for the Swordsmanship Museum and Academy recently, and it was a ton of fun. It was awesome. But in doing all my research and planning for it, I wanted to get steel Scottish basket hilt swords for my students. And I went and I saw the prices of the basket hilts that were available in the market, and my mind was blown at how expensive they were. It seems like the only one that currently, and by the way, currently is January 2024, that's available readily on the market is from Castile Armory, and it costs upward of $600 plus shipping. Um, and in my opinion, I personally like the history and the culture behind these styles of fighting, and I didn't necessarily like the design of the basket hilt that they had anyway. So even if I was going to spend that much money for a steel sparring sword, I wanted to be able to make one that I would be more comfortable with. But that design just doesn't look Scottish. In my opinion, or historical. So, and I understand them trying to make it affordable and economical, but I have a alternative for you guys. And here's the truth. And really, to be honest, this is the rough formatting for almost all of my infamous Frankenstein HEMA sparring swords. The idea is you get a replica. And when I say replica, I want to clarify, I mean a low quality replica. But for those of you who are HEMA folks who might not be familiar with the term replica, a more HEMA appropriate term would be blunt, or a sword that is made to be a reenactment or even costume piece. And in this case, you don't want a high quality sword. So, what I have here, for example, is the hilt for a tourist Civil War sword, which you may have seen some of my earlier videos using a similar one with a steel sparring blade on it. And what you'll usually get is a low quality tourist, quote unquote, style sword like this that will have a nut at the top holding it all together. Now, normally nuts are considered bad in the world of historical replicas because you wouldn't have a sword with threading on the tang, you'd have one that would be peened over historically. But replicas can vary on the quality scale, and usually low quality ones will have threaded tangs on their usually horrible stainless steel low quality blades. But we're not in it for the blade, we want the handle, which is not usually completely historically accurate, but in my opinion, it'll be a little bit better than what we in the HEMA community have on the market. So here are the two main pieces that I have for our project today. The first is this right here. This I got from Cult of Athena for like $60, I think. It is an unbranded tourist Scottish basket hilt sword. Comes with a steel scabbard. We don't need this, but I'm going to keep it on because this horrible low quality stainless steel blade with gross etching work on it is actually sharp for whatever reason. So I'm going to keep the scabbard on it so that I don't accidentally cut myself. But what you might not know is a good way to indicate these swords, whether they're high quality or low quality, is whether they have that screw-on nut as a tang or finial that I mentioned earlier. And this one just so happens to have one. So we will be removing the handle, guard, and handle hardware from this sword and putting them on the other piece of our Frankenstein sword, which just came in the mail today. A Castile Armory Economy side sword blade. And I can't remember the exact dimensions I have, but I'll try to put that in the description of the video for which one this is. But you should also try to take some measurements from the hilt that you'll be using before you purchase how long the sword will be, and maybe do a little bit of research to make sure you get a length that's historically appropriate for the sword you're making. So we're going to be putting those two together, but I might not have all the pieces. Now, in my workshop here, I've got plenty of different pieces of hardware, but I'm not too sure off the top of my head which style, metric or imperial, the threading is on Castile, nor the threading on replicas. However, replicas really usually have metric threading, and I'm not sure what Castile uses, but I've got plenty around here, so we'll see if I have it. If not, I'll pause the video, I'll go buy it, and then I'll come back and finish it off. So let's start with the first step, and that would be disassembling our low-quality replica basket hilt. And I want to say low quality because it's claiming to be a historical replica, but it's not. It's got low quality, like, etching and cutouts on the guard here. And then, of course, we mentioned the stainless steel blade, which is just low quality in general, as most tourist swords are. But we're going to try to unscrew this and separate it. So let us get our equipment. I do always recommend having yourself a rag, in this case a microfiber rag, but it can be various styles, and then you've got yourself your wrench. The reason you have your rag is because you want that fabric around the part of the hilt that you will be unscrewing so that you can put your wrench on it without scratching the metal. So let's see if I can do this. If I can't get it on the first try, I'll pause the video and I'll come back. But again, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Let's see if I can do this. Yes, wonderful. This is working well so far. Unfortunately, the hilt, or I'm sorry, the nut on this Scottish basket hilt is kind of angled. It's kind of like a half circle. And so when I'm trying to put pressure with the wrench on it, it just slides up the curvature of the finial. But that is why we have our rag, so we don't scratch anything on it. See if I can keep this going and unscrew this baby. I'm going to pause this and turn it back on when it's unscrewed. This is a good opportunity to talk about the concept of improvisation when it comes to making Frankenstein swords like this, because sometimes these weird tourist swords that are supposed to be easy are actually a bit difficult. So what you can kind of see here is that even though this finial here at the bottom of the sword does indeed untwist, it does not unscrew. I have no idea how it's being held in place. However, it looks like this little ball at the very top of the finial might be a separate piece that might be acting as a nut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to unscrew the finial piece, but if it doesn't work, I might have to snap it off just to see how this thing works, which is fine because this isn't the piece I need. This is the piece I need. And when I put the Castile blade into the handle, I'll be able to take a nut of a different variety that I have up here in my storage, which you all can get from any hardware store, and use that to hold the whole thing together. While I do this, I'm going to put it on pause because it's unimportant, and I'll come back when I'm all finished. All right, I'm back. I figured it out. So I actually took off this little piece of fabric that had this brass ring attaching it to the finial, and that opened up this hole here that I was able to stick a screwdriver through and use that to gain leverage to unscrew it. And it does turn out that I was spinning a decorative finial here, this guy, when in reality, this ball, which at first glance appeared to be attached physically to the finial, is in fact not. It is separate, and that is the nut. And that's what I mean when it takes a bit of improvisation, I guess you'd say creativity, to try to figure out how these freaking tourist swords are put together. But we figured it out. So let's go ahead and unscrew this guy entirely. Here's what the finial nut looks like, which went through this decorative ring. And now we are able to remove the handle. This part of the sword, scabbard and blade, is now useless to us. We have no desire for it. Maybe I can get the training blade in the steel scabbard, but it wouldn't fit perfectly. It would wobble around, and to be honest, steel scabbards aren't really appropriate for this anyway. So we're going to put this in the junk parts pile. Wha-bam! So now we have our basket, and we're going to put the sword on it. Now I can already tell that there's going to be an issue, and that is at the top of the scabbard, the top of this hilt, you can see the size of the hole that the blade has to go through, the tang would have to go through. And I can already see, thanks to Castile's quality, that they have a nice, strong, and thick blade tang right here, which is already too wide to go through this. So we're going to have to pull out some heavy hardware to see, to be able to widen this up to allow the Castile Armory blade to go through. Right now, we can only go this far. And you can see it gets kind of caught up there. Oh, you know what? Maybe it doesn't. But it does get caught up in something else. And let me pull that out. This is the handle. And while it looks wide up here, it actually tapers pretty quickly just to the size of the hole. Let's see how far we can get this on the blade just to get an idea of how wide we have to make this. Aha. Difficult for you guys to see on that camera angle, but it's just a little bit too small, the hole in the handle. Just a little bit. So what we're going to have to do, and this handle is going to have to go right about here. So we're going to have to cut ourselves a wider hole in the middle of this handle so that it can fit all the way down here to allow for the end to stick out. I can already tell another problem too, and that problem is I misjudged the length of this tang, and it's not going to easily stick out the bottom of our handguard. Oh my gosh, this red fabric is absolutely gross. It's like Halloween costume fabric. Okay, so it indeed is just slightly too small on the hilt as well. So we will grab some hardware, and we are going, or power tools, and we are going to try to widen all of this so it'll fit together nice and snug. I'll get back to you when I have those. And before I go fully, I also looked ahead. Foresight is very important to have with this kind of project. And I noticed that I'll be needing more tools or more pieces than I expected. So just to show you what I'm looking at here, we are going to slide the handle through this larger hole just to indicate the depth that it will be at. It will be about here. Now, if you look in, you'll see that the tang does not, the threaded tang on the blade does not come close to the bottom of the guard. Now this was fixed on the last, the original when the tourist sword was put together by having this nut here that was holding in this recessed female nut extender thing. And that went into this, and so the threading stuck in a little bit farther. Now this is not enough to actually reach the bottom of our threading here, but I have two solutions that I'm going to probably purchase the equipment for either one, just to make sure it would work. One solution I would have would be to lengthen the threading, and I would do that by using a double-ended female nut, if you'd call it that. This one's too small for the width of the Castile blade, but I would essentially screw it on halfway here, and then I would take a threaded rod that matches the threading here and screw that in halfway the other way, and then we would essentially have ourselves a little extender. A couple things to keep in mind is to make sure that when you're chiseling out the inside of the handle, that it's wide enough to fit this usually thicker sleeve, but that would allow the bottom of this recessed nut, or the recessed nut, to hit the now extended thread. It does create a weak spot, but it's also a weak spot at the bottom end of the handle, and it wouldn't receive nearly as much, or bottom end of the tang underneath the handle, wouldn't receive nearly as much force against it as it would if it were, for example, up here. The other option that we have is that I can get rid of this spacer that in the design of the original tourist sword was necessary so that it can be nice and snug here. It would prevent this large hole from having everything go through, but I can probably replace this with a couple high quality washers. so that instead of sticking out much farther from the bottom of the guard, I can instead take a washer, which I don't have one handy, we'll just use this for sake, and fit it in here. I'd fit it in here and take one of these recessed nuts and slide it in there with hopefully getting a washer that isn't so wide that the top falls through. But that would hold it in place much closer and hopefully be able to reach our tang without needing to make those extenders, which was in that first alternative. I'll come back to you guys when I have all the equipment we need, both to widen the top of the guard, to chisel out the inside of the handle, and to make sure that our tang fits the nut in one way or another. See you then. Hey guys, it's been like months since I recorded the last part of the video, but I have finally found some time to work on the sword. I did get this 8mm coupling, which is apparently the size threading that Castile Armor used for the blade, but that is not helpful because I need to get a well screw, aka an inset screw, and Menards did not have it in the metric. So I am going to go and check the internet, but for now I'm going to be using my Dremel tool because that's the best tool I have at this workshop, and I'm going to try to widen this part so that the blade can fit snugly in there, and you can see it's going to stop right at that wide part right there as I put it in. It's just barely too big, so I'm going to widen it just a bit so that we can get the blade in there and measure how big we need. I might widen it more so we can get it all the way up to the base of that blade. See how it kind of has that stepped size? We'll see about that. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but we'll do it as we go. I don't need to record for this, but I'll show you what we get. Hey guys, we finished it. Look, it fits. Hooray! And just as we thought, the threaded part does not stick outside of the basket, so I will have to find an inset screw and hold it in place either with the pommel that came with the guard or just to do a makeshift one with a nut. But that is for another day after I order the inset. The other issue is this here. Well, there's a few issues. One, as we expected, it's not going to stay. The blade is not going to stay at the proper angle without some wedges, so we'll have to get something to wedge in on either side of that hole there. And then also the weird steps there, which I'll have to look into. I originally thought that it was going to be for a leather washer like this one that I just happen to have handy, even though it's too small for this blade. But I'm actually not sure what it's for. So if I am going to have to widen the mouth of the basket hilt in order to fit that a little bit, I'll have to find a different head because the rotary tool router bit did not dig into the metal as quickly as I wanted it to, and it's pretty dull right now. So we'll see. Hopefully it won't be another couple months before I get to the next step. See you then. All right, guys, here I am in my other workshop. It's a bit of a mess, but, I want to get this done. So what I'm doing is I took the handle of the basket hilt, and I'm fitting it to the shape of the tang here using my drill with a variety of different bits. Now, previously, I did find out that the offset nut, or the reverse nut that I got before, does in fact just barely fit with just the hilt, not with the little nub at the end. So I found this washer that does fit, and I am able to put this whole thing together without the grip. So the grip is the last thing that needs to work. So off screen, off camera, I had been putting it together. Here, let me see if I can find a way to show you. So here we go. I put it on, and it took a lot of finagling and a little bit of pressure.
and you can see the bottom of the tang just popping up through there. Now, I had some issues where the bottom of the tang, the threaded bottom of the tang, was pushing up against the wall there. So I previously, the last thing I just did before recording this is I ate away a little bit of the wall over there to hopefully get the offset nut to fit. So I'm going to try to put that all together right now. We'll see if it works. I did it, you guys. It's almost done. There's a couple issues. One is I still wasn't able to widen the top of the basket hilt, probably because it's just a thick piece of metal, to get flush with the primary lip. There's that secondary lip right there that I did get it flush against. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but we will find out. And the other thing is, even though it's all nice and tight and snug, there, and this will happen all the time when you're Frankensteining swords, when you turn the grip, the blade slightly changes the angle in the guard. So the last thing I'm going to do is put a wedge right up in there, maybe on the other side too. See if I can hold that sword a little bit in place. That'll be the last thing. Let me go see if I can find one in this mess. Maybe it'll be plastic, maybe it'll be wood. I'll see what I can find, and we'll go from there. I did it, you guys. I found this piece of scrap nylon plastic, actually from an old synthetic project. And look, it's cut in wedge shape, and it's just about the thickness of that hole there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this in here as far as I can, pull it out, and then cut it off at however deep it is, and then put it back in so I don't have this massive amount of plastic sticking out. I'll probably cut it right here on this bandsaw after clearing everything off of it. And I'll let you know how it goes. I did it, you guys! By the way, my hands are like triple XL size, so if you have anything smaller than mine, this basket hilt should be just fine with, these are the Purple Heart Rapier and single stick gloves that do have fingertip protectors, old style, in there. But it fits just fine, sort of. Totally fine doing these techniques. So there you have it, an economy, super economy, basket hilt sparring sword by Frankensteining. In this case, a Castile Armory blade. We've also done it even cheaper with VB arming sword blades, and then with a generic, I guess you'd call it tourist grade hilt from a Scottish basket hilt sword online, and a few pieces of hardware. So, hooray, we did it! Thanks, guys. Hope this saved you. This, by the way, as compared to the economy basket hilt from Castile, which is about $600 plus shipping, we saved right about $300 in making this bad boy right here. So, cool stuff. Thanks, everyone. Take care.